What is the secret to getting double-digit returns with IUL? And the only way to do that is to keep the cost of insurance very low and then eventually to be self-insured. That's where your cash value in the policy will grow to equal and then exceed the death benefit. Why would I diversify like that? Because historically, based on history all the way back to the Great Depression, you will average 11.3% based upon that diversified portfolio. That's Warren Buffett's #1 rule of investing. Don't lose money. And rule number 2 is don't forget rule number 1. It's amazing how many IUL agents never learn what I am calling the secret, even though it's really not that big of a secret, to professionals that we train. But you have to understand how to diversify, rebalance, and seize opportunities. When there's anxiety, there's opportunity, and that's why our clients experience double-digit returns all the time. So get ready, you're gonna be blown away. I'm Doug Andrew, and I've been a financial strategist and a retirement planning specialist now for 5 decades, helping thousands of Americans prepare for long-term goals such as a comfortable retirement, where they will not outlive their money, and most Americans do outlive their money following the herd, putting money in IRAs and 401ks invested in the market. And they outlive their money due to the negative impact of taxes, inflation, and market volatility. So we eliminate those dangers. We make our clients immune from them. But my favorite vehicle, without question, if you've watched very many episodes, is a properly structured, max-funded IUL, Index Universal Life. And I have critics out there that go, oh, show me an IUL policy that has ever outperformed its original illustration. Show me an IUL policy that has ever earned double digits. And so we have hundreds of these policies that perform at average returns over, the single digits in the 10, 11, 12, 14% ranges, okay? So get ready. I'm going to show you the secret behind this. And why, if you're, wanting to own one of these yourself, you need to make sure you line yourself with an IUL agent that does what I'm going to show you. And if you are an IUL professional, you better doggone well learn how to do this for your clients, or you are doing them a disservice, okay? So at the end, I'm going to gift you a copy of my most recent 300-page best-selling book, The Laser Fund, which will help you understand a little bit more about what I'm talking about here, okay? So what is the secret behind getting these double-digit returns with IUL? Again, you're taking out an Index Universal Life policy and taking the least amount of insurance the IRS will let you get away with to put in the most money the IRS allows. And so what is the secret? Well, it's really not a secret to us, but it is to so many agents who are never taught this, okay? So how important is it to get it structured correctly in the first place? You got to get it right from the beginning. Many agents don't know how to do that. So that's the first key, okay? 85% of the successful result you want in an IUL policy is determined in the first 15% of the process. That's how it's designed and structured in the first place. Taking the least amount of insurance and putting in the most money as fast as the IRS allows. But too many agents trying to accommodate a lump sum or whatever, they focus on avoiding a MEC. And so then they jack up the death benefit way higher than it needs to be, and the cost of insurance ends up being way more than it needed to be, instead of spreading out the lump sum over a few years and getting away with less insurance, which is lower costs. What you want to do at the end of the day is, if you average 11, you want a net 10. 10 is cash-on-cash internal rate of return. And the only way to do that is to keep the cost of insurance very low, and then eventually to be self-insured. That's where your cash value in the policy will grow to equal and then exceed the death benefit, usually within the first 11, 12 years, usually by the 15th year. Why do you need the guarantees of a whole life policy that keeps the death benefit guaranteed if your cash in an IUL policy within 11 years grows to equal the death benefit? Now your cash equals the death benefit. You don't need any guarantees. But a lot of times people don't understand the terms like internal rate of return. So get ready. I'm going to show you this because you could audit your own IUL policy once you understand this. Now, we talk about lead indicators versus lag indicators. In other words, when you can sort of see that the market is doing okay, like it's always done, then there's a strategy you use when the market is normal, okay? But then there's a lag indicator, which means the market crashes and maybe you didn't see it coming. Well, you don't just sit there. I mean, the beauty of IUL, you don't lose any money when the market goes down. Zero is your return. Zero is your hero. You don't lose 30 or 40% like people who have their money in the market or in a variable life insurance policy. But hello, that's a lag indicator. What should you do after the market goes down? What do you know pretty predictably? It's going to rebound, okay? I mean, you hear all the advisors say, hang in there. The market always comes back and you'll make back the 40% you lost. Well, why don't you capitalize on that information? You didn't lose when the market went down, but why don't you capitalize on that you know the market's going to rebound? So that's called a lag indicator. So IUL indexing, I'll be super simple here. If the market is doing what it normally does, you could take your IUL policy and allocate 40% of the cash value and link it to a 1-year point-to-point high cap, okay? 40% of your cash value could be linked to a 2-year point-to-point, okay? 20% could be in a 5-year if you're not gonna need the money for 5 years or longer down the road. Why would I diversify like that? Because historically, based on history all the way back to the Great Depression, you will average 11.3% based upon that diversified portfolio. Hello? You earn 11.3, you're gonna net within 10 if you structured it correctly, okay? You're earning double digits. Now, what's a lag indicator? When the market goes down, you may switch from this allocation to 50% in a 2-year and 50% in a 5-year because you'll come out way ahead. If you then do this, you link to these at the bottom of a downturn and you write it up. That's a 14%. See, here you're going with a no cap. That's a 14% average crediting rate. You earn 14, you'll net 13. We do this all the time, and I can prove it to you, okay? Now, folks, this is an example of a client that with diversifying got 16% on this much of their money, 21.75% on this portion, 17.67% on this portion. And so they diversify and they end up with an average of 18.97%. Yeah. Are those double digits? Yeah. This is very, very common. So folks, sometimes I use the metaphor, if you're going to be playing in a golf tournament and you have the choice of using a professional golfer like Phil Mickelson's swing, or you could use his clubs, what would you choose? Well, I'd rather have his swing, not his clubs. Most financial advisors focus on the clubs. They think the secret is in the commodity or the clubs. Buy this stock or bond or mutual fund or gold or silver. It's not in the commodity. It's in the strategy. It's in the swing, okay? And so the swing is indexing and understanding when to rebalance and how to diversify, how to use the lead and lagging indicators to lock in double-digit returns on your IUL, okay? So you can learn which are the best IUL policies out there, but frankly, it's not so much which carrier, which IUL. I can make almost any carrier's IUL perform well if you use the right swing. It doesn't matter what clubs. Is this making sense? Okay, now, the objectives of a max-funded IUL is to increase the liquidity of that money, the ability to access it when you need it, the safety, not only of the institution, but safety of your principal, whatever you're set aside, you don't want to lose. If your money is in the market, in IRAs and 401ks, it's subject to volatility. I don't want to go through that market risk. Rate of return, to earn a rate of return that's greater than the inflation rate at the time, you want to outpace inflation. So you need to link your returns to the things that inflate, okay? I've always earned a rate of return on my IUL greater than the inflation rate at the time. And fourth is tax advantages. So these are the 4 pillars: liquidity, safety, rate of return, and tax benefits. And a property structured IUL passes the laser test with flying colors, and you can see why in another video episode that explains what the laser test is, okay? Now, what is IRR? A lot of agents, it's amazing how many don't even understand. This is called internal rate of return. And I remember from 2003 to 2007, I had 3,000 insurance agents, CPAs, tax attorneys come through and pay $8,000 for my 3-day training. And among them were numerous CPAs, tax attorneys, and whole life agents, okay? And these whole life agents were comparing whole life to universal life and indexed universal life. And I would say, so what is the internal rate of return on your whole life insurance policy there? And they would go 8%. And I go, no, I'm talking about internal rate of return. And there wasn't one whole life agent that knew what I was talking about because their management don't ever teach them because they're embarrassed, okay? So if you want to calculate internal rate of return, you want to add up all the premiums. Let's say they pay for 30 years. And all of a sudden the cash value of this whole life policy is X. Let's say it's $1 million at age 65, okay? So in order to have $1 million at age 65, what rate of return would you have to have been getting on these premiums you pay to end up with that much money? And they go, 8%. And I go, no, it isn't 8. That was the gross rate of return. And that was a Northwestern Mutual policy where they were projecting 8% dividends and what have you. And I go, no, that is the gross rate of return. And the agents go, we've never been taught what internal rate of return is. I said, cash on cash. So I had to calculate it for them, and I simply calculated what the internal rate of return was, and it was 5.9% if they left and paid premiums and left that policy till age 95. Before it was 5.9%. In other words, in order to end up with as much money as that whole life policy accumulated by age 95, it was only 5.9% interest compounded annually. That means the insurance cost was gobbling up 2.1%. And they finally got it. They go, so Doug, your IUL, because you get away with less insurance for the same amount of money we're trying to reposition for living benefits, and because you can get in the money faster, you're able to average 9 on your IUL and net 8, which is what we're grossing. We couldn't figure out because when you say you earn 9 and net 8, we're saying, well, we're earning 8, but we didn't understand internal rate of return. And now we're embarrassed because we didn't have an internal rate of return of 8 like you did at age 65. Our internal rate of return is in the 4s. It wasn't until age 95 that we even hit 5.9% internal rate of return, okay? So whenever you're comparing to whole life, quit comparing the death benefit. Just ask the whole life agent, hey, I want to sock away $500,000 or whatever it is, and I want you to take the least amount of insurance that I can get away with a whole life and put in the $500,000 as fast as whole life will allow, and then show me how much money I'll have at age 65, and I'll calculate the internal rate of return. And they will not be able to even come close to IUL, okay? And so that's how you actually calculate. Now, if you want to unleash the greatest secret of IUL, most affluent people come to us and they are putting millions of dollars into IUL. People say, really? Why would they do that? Well, because of what it does, okay? They want to eliminate losses. Indexed universal life, you don't lose. When you go through a period, this 20-year period, okay, from January of the year 2000 to March of 2020, look at these years. This was after the 9/11 terrorist attacks. This was the 2008, okay? Look at these losses. They don't want to lose. And, you get people who manage money in the market. They say, well, why don't you want to capture these gains? Well, because if you lose 40%, you have to have a 67% gain to make up for a 40% loss. Just eliminate losses in the first place. That's Warren Buffett's #1 rule of investing. Don't lose money. And rule number 2 is don't forget rule number 1, okay? They want to eliminate these loss years. It's easier said than done. With IUL, zero is your hero. When the market goes down, the options expire worthless. You have the same amount of money you started with, but you don't lose due to that market downturn. What's the second objective? Well, they want to capture the gains. They want to lock in those gains, okay? So that during these years, they want to capture these gains, and some years they could be capped. If the market goes up 18.99, they might be capped at 12. But sometimes there is no cap if you know when to change the strategy, okay? So they want to capture the gains and lock them in. But what's the third goal for affluent people? They want to protect it from taxes. Hello? Money inside of an IUL is tax-free. The three strengths of IUL is you do not lose when the market goes down. You lock in any gains and reset. So if you make 20, 30, 61% in a given year, you lock in that gain. And the next year, if the market drops 40%, you don't lose one dime of the money you made the year before. That's called lock in and reset. You can't do that with your money invested in the market, okay? And then when you take out the money, it's totally tax-free. That's why it's my favorite vehicle. Now, if you have a properly trained IUL professional, somebody who's certified and has learned the secrets that I'm talking about right now, they will be able to simulate. See, the IUL agents that we train in IUL Insiders, okay, and they don't work for us. They sell with their own carriers and so forth. But we show them how to simulate the actual performance with the real world instead of this average return on an insurance illustration of 6% or whatever. They're not going to get an average of 6% year in and year out. They're going to have some years higher, some years lower, okay? And so you have to look at the real world. And so here is like a 20, 25-year period, and this is the reality. You have these loss years. Well, you can come out and average, 9, 10, 11, 12%. If you diversify and you don't make anything those red years, but you don't lose. But hello, if that's a lagging indicator and you have loss years like 2001 to 2003 and 2007 to 2008, our clients didn't sit there for 3 years and 2 years and earn zero. They came in for annual reviews and at a minimum, we move them back to the general account portfolio rate earning 5. And they earned an average of 11.17 during the worst decade since the Great Depression. They doubled and tripled their money when most Americans were barely coming back to break even. But that's not the only strategy. What about a threshold, okay? I'm not going to get into the complications of this, but you can simulate what happens, but when you actually see how to rebalance after a market crash, okay? So let's look at these market crashes. Let's look at the market crash during COVID-19. March of 2020, the market dropped in 30 days, 30%, okay? Now, when there's anxiety, that spells opportunity. Now, most of the time, our clients are diversified until there's a crash. Nobody saw COVID-19 happening that quick. But hello, that's a lagging indicator. Now, normally, we would not recommend a threshold strategy on IUL. What's a threshold strategy? That means that if you switch from a cap where they cap you, that if the market goes up 15, maybe they only pay you 12, they cap it, but the trade-off is you don't lose during a down market. Well, if you think we're headed for a real big upsurge in the market, you can go to a threshold strategy, and that's where there is no cap. You will get credited 100% of whatever the market did if it grew, 30, 40, 50, 60% or more, but they subtract 5% off of it. We don't normally use that strategy because if you're averaging 12, you'd only net 7. I would rather earn 12 and net 11, double digits. But during those red years, like March of 2020, my 2 sons contacted 800 of their clients that had money ready to be linked. This client chose to link half of their money, 18,000 of their 36,000. They kept the other 3 diversified. The 18,000, the market from March of 2020 to March of 2021, it went up 66.33%. Yeah, it was almost predictable. Minus 5, they netted 61.33%. That $18,300 grew by 11 grand. It was worth $29,806. They got 61.33%. We had a client that because of that averaged 12.88% on his IUL by doing this strategy. He ended up with 110,000 after 13 years. On his original illustration, 13 years earlier, we projected he would only have 63,000 and he would have been thrilled with that. Instead, he had 110,000. We do this all the time. I could show you dozens of statements in double digits, okay? We had a client with $852,000 in March of 2020. That was just a portion of the money he had. He had, I think, $4 million in his policy. $852,000 got 61.33% in 1 year. March of 2021, that was worth $1,387,000. He made $535,000. He locked in that gain. If the next year the market would have dropped 40%, he would have still had his $1,387,000. He would not have lost one dime of the $535,000 because he locks in the gains and resets. Show me anything else that does that. Here's a client that had $1,218,952, got credited 61.33% in 12 months, and ended up with $3,086,000. Hello? $1.2 million to $3 million. He made $1.8 million tax-free. If you're not getting it, you're going to miss out. So, folks, this is what diversifying can do. 20% allocated in 5 strategies, 14.89, 10.25, 15.07, 8%, 13%. You add those up and divide by 5, the average return is double digits. We do this all the time. Now, if you want to learn more of how to achieve financial freedom and get double-digit returns on IUL, if you don't believe it, you're going to miss the boat, okay? The worst form of ignorance is when you reject something that you don't understand because you've never heard it or seen it before. That's the worst form of ignorance is when you just rule out something because you've never seen it. Have you ever seen your brain? How do you know that exists, okay? And so I would recommend that you study my book, The Laser Fund. Click on the link below or go to laserfund.com and you contribute a nominal amount toward the shipping and handling. I'll cover the rest of that and I'll pay for the book. It retails on Amazon for $20 up to $70. I'll pay for the book. I'll fire out a hard copy to you via priority mail. And while you're in there claiming your free copy, if you'd like to listen and learn or watch and learn, there's audio and video formats. It's actually 2 books in one. This side is the left brain side with all the charts and graphs and explanations, 14 chapters. If you're more of a right brain learner, you learn by stories, you flip it over and read this one, 62 actual client stories. If you want to use your left and right brain, or in other words, your whole brain, read the entire book. But folks, when you're in there, you can actually schedule an appointment, if you would like, with no cost or obligation, with an IUL certified professional, which if you want to make sure it's done right and you know how to rebalance and diversify, you're going to want to make sure a certified professional is helping you with your IUL. And that's why I'd recommend you talk to somebody who's gone through and become certified.